Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
And welcome into Life Planning 101 right here on KTX, KWBY. Very pleasant good Monday morning, everyone. Terry Slavens with you. And today, not Angela, we have replacements.
We always say it takes a couple of us to replace her, so you get two of us today.
All right.
That's
well,
right.
very good morning, and I'm sure we have a great show on tap. So, Brett, take it away.
Well, what we're excited about this morning is today what we're going to touch on, and again, because there's so much to this piece of the puzzle, but investing and going through 10 questions that every investor needs to ask. It's not always about, the response. It's about knowing the right questions to ask to get us to where we need to be. And, investing can be complicated, but if you think back about anything you do in life, if you spend a lot of time doing it and you work at it day in and day out, is it as complicated as something that you get thrown at you one time here and there? So if you spend your time learning and being educated about it, it's going to be able to help you understand and ask the questions of how and the whys to be able to make things work. So very excited today. I know you guys have listened to Aaron many times, Aaron Kennedy, our CFA and money manager in the house. And really today what we're going to do is a Q&A with Aaron and kind of get some direction from him on some of these questions. So Aaron, we're sure glad to have you here this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
We'll just go ahead and kick it off. We've got 10 questions. The first question that we want to ask is, should I invest if I don't understand investing? What do I do if I don't know the first thing about investing, but I've heard that there's the upside or the potential? Should I invest if I don't know anything about investing?
Well, the simple answer to that is yes. The greatest thing about investing, or the number one tried and true way to be a successful investor, is give it time. And I'm not talking a week, I'm not talking a month, I'm talking a lifetime. Even if you listen to Warren Buffett, he preaches over and over again that it's not the sexiest investments that make you money, it's time. So the earliest you can get in, even if you don't know exactly what you're doing, the better off you're going to be. And, as a consumer today, there is so much education out there. And for the most part, people are lucky because their first experience with investing is probably a 401k or some retirement plan. And the choices that you're going to get inside of that are going to go over what exactly you're getting in. And if you're new to investing, I would probably say stay as simple as absolute possible. And, try to get your hands wrapped around what kind of risk you're taking and whether you're capable of taking the risk on those more simple investments.
It's not what you know, it's what you don't know that could hurt you. And it's interesting because you said most investors learn by their 401k. When we go to work and we start our careers, is that an overnight success? Is that a lottery ticket that we get involved in? And I think that's what you're saying is it's a thing it's what we get started in, and it could be 10, 20, 30, 40 years of our life of a career, and that's why you see those type of plans work, is because the worker, the employer are tied to those for such a long period of time, and they have that success that they're forced into a discipline of time.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, as I reading this morning is a quote I think by Buffett is, you need to go into investing like you're looking at grass grow or paint dry. If you want the quick, the sexy, then you go ahead and grab the cash and go to Vegas and see what happens. Roll the dice.
That's exactly right.
Well, thanks. And speaking of Vegas, we're going to the next one, risk. A big question is, what does risk mean? And a lot of times it's, what does risk mean for you? We find working with the families, the individuals, and the business owners that we work with is we all have a different risk tolerance, and we're all able to look at the volatility different than others. If you could expand on that, that'd be great.
Yes. Risk is such a big word. People think that risk means losing my money permanently, and that truly is the definition. Risk is not really volatility, ups and downs in the market, because that's happened. But it's a loss of permanent purchase power. So if you think about that, risk is also not only being in stocks, being in bonds, but it's also doing nothing. Because if your grandmother would have saved $100, 50, 60 years ago to give to you today, buried it in the backyard, what would that be worth?
$100.
Yeah, it wouldn't buy acres of land like it would when she was a kid.
Right.
It'd maybe fill up your car and get you some snacks. That's it. So there's risk everywhere. And this is the most difficult part of it, because you can be in the S&P 500 and take market risk. You can be in an international fund and take market risk plus currency risk, plus country risk, plus government risk. You can be in bonds and take interest rate risk. You can take credit risk. There's all these different things that move the different market needles over time, and it can be very overwhelming. And a lot of the times people just do these things without knowing exactly what they're doing. And I'm not saying any of these risks are wrong. Usually if you take a risk, you're taking that risk to make money. But most people don't know what risk they're taking, and if you're taking a currency risk or a credit risk, and a credit risk is buying a bond that has a chance of default, and that's taking corporate bond risk, you might be taking that and not understand why your portfolio is not going straight up with the market. And it's because, you're not taking that risk. You're taking bond risk, and it gets confusing. And most people need help to put that together, to realize, okay, what risks am I taking, and how should this portfolio perform with the risks I'm taking, and be comfortable with it. And, there's plenty of smart people and there's plenty of education out there, but unless you have the time to study it 24/7 and really understand and have the expectations of what you're doing, it can get a little not only confusing but aggravating.
With that in mind, I think we'll take a break, and we'll be right back with a question of what risk should you be taking.
We'll continue right here on KTX KWBY. And Life Planning 101 continues here on KTX KWBY. A bunch of great information, so we're going to get right back to it. Brett?
Yeah, the next question, what we're going through today is the 10 questions every investor needs to ask. When we've got Aaron Kennedy here with us, our money manager, CFA. Next question we want to go into is, what amount of risk should I be taking? And again, when we sit down with those that we work with, a lot of times they'll look up and they'll say, am I taking the right risk? And really the question is, what's your situation? What do you need the risk to be, and what can you stomach to be able to stay, what we talked at the beginning, is over the long haul, stay invested over time to be able to have successes. And Aaron, again, if you'd elaborate on that, please.
All right. All my life experiences and all my work experiences have boiled down to making sure the client or the investor stays invested, in order to get that long-term benefit of being in the market. And when it comes to how much risk you should take, there's a good way to think about it. So if you're on the interstate and you're only comfortable driving the speed limit, and you wake up one morning and you're running late, you get stuck behind a train, and it looks like you're going to be 30 minutes late. Are you willing to drive 140 miles an hour to get to work on time?
Probably not.
Probably not. So when it comes to risk, we do a lot of goal-based investing. Where do you want to be in time? Do you really want to drive 130 miles an hour? Are you capable of driving 130 miles an hour? Or are you more comfortable just being 5-10 minutes late? So when we work with our clients, we really want to get a good understanding of how they feel about risk, because the market goes up and down. That's two things I'm allowed to guarantee. I can't say it's going up anytime, I can't put a period on that, but that's what the market does. It goes up and down. So we spend a lot of time with seeing where the client is comfortable with their investments, how much they're willing to go up and down, and then set good expectations for what they should expect going in the future. And there's tons of stuff out there, risk questionnaires, there's software out there, there's tons of stuff. And I don't think, pegging an allocation to somebody makes sense to anybody. But, really sitting down and showing, this is where you've tested. Now, this is where your expectations should be. You should be comfortable here going down this amount, which equals this amount of money. But long term, this is where you should be, and this is where we should be able to get you because of your goals. And that's really, it's a big conversation, and it's figuring out the right risk.
And the right risk leads into our next question, which is, we want to know what investments are right for me. And one is the global investing world of how many investments are actually out there, and then being able to sort through those that are not known per se to the general investor outside of your big companies, the ones that really are the big ones that everybody is aware of, reading and seeing in the news. There's so much more that makes our world go around. So the other question is, all right, looking at my goal, backing up, here's where I am, like you were talking about, here's where I want to be. With that in mind, what investments, what makes sense for me?
Ooh, that's $1 million question. For the most part, I would think most people need to probably stay simple. Like I said, once we start introducing more and more risks, that changes our trajectory. And it doesn't necessarily change where we end up and at what time, but it can change the ride, how smooth. And, there's really no one investment that says this is going to be the be-all best for all time. It's just not out there because of the word I said, time. Things change over time. Who would have thought the best investment would have been a phone, versus, a grocery store? Things change, technology changes, countries change, governments change. So, to be able to put those ingredients together and get the perfect recipe, unless you're just very well versed and very well educated and stay on top of everything, unless you're staying extremely simple, I think you would need probably some good help navigating all the different waters out there.
Yeah, it goes back to what you feel comfortable with. If you've been looking at it day in and day out, you're going to have a knowledge of what to look at for what the companies are doing. And as we lead into our next question is, okay, what investments are right for me? And then the next question is, okay, how many different types or how many types of investments should I have? Because there's all the different sectors and then all of the different companies that fall inside of that. Now the question comes down to, if we've got the goal down where we are, where we want to be, next question is, okay, what types of investments are going to be able to be right for me?
So that's going to come back to the returns. Number one, the returns that you need to get to your goals. If you're investing in cash, that's going to have probably a lot lower return stream than the stock market. And being in the U.S. stock market is going to be very different than if you were investing in Brazil. So number one, we kind of have to see the goals, or you need to understand the goals that you have and where you want to be, where you want to be retired, or where you want to send your kids to school, how often you want a vacation. And then you need to say, okay, what types of investments do I need to achieve that? And if it is cash, you got plenty and you need that low return stream, then maybe that's where you need to be. But most of us have to invest over time. So maybe you need more stocks, but maybe you can't handle the risks. So you add in bonds to lower your risk, or you add more cash to lower your risk, and that really needs to be a good conversation with an advisor or somebody that really understands to be able to put all that together, because it's not only returns, it's the path to get there. It really is how much risk inside of that portfolio to achieve those goals and what you want that ride to look like.
Along with that, is it correct to say that it would be the discipline? You're saying it's not just about the investments, but it's the discipline to keep you from making those emotional decisions based off of those investments, or something you read, or something your wisest friend just saw on the news.
Yes. Discipline is, I keep saying time, and what I mean by time is time staying in the market, but it is a discipline, because we were with a group this weekend, that a bunch of us advisors, and one of the things this one advisor was telling me, says, no matter how much I've tried, I cannot beat the neighbor. The neighbor always beats me. I was like, you know what? None of us can beat the neighbor.
Never.
Because the neighbor's only going to tell you that one stock that's done extremely well, and he only may have $200 in it, but it's done great. And that's what he's going to tell his buddy about. That's what he's going to tell his neighbor about. The most successful thing he's done may not have moved the needle on the portfolio. The rest of his portfolio might have crashed, But the thing, back to the question, You know, the thing is, you don't want to chase the hottest thing out there. Because if you're chasing the hottest thing out there, guess what? That's already done its thing. You know, you're buying at the top. You know, if you were there early, you know, that was a great investment. But buying after it's run up 200-300%, you know, you've already missed out.
Right.
You've missed the easy money.
I say that ship's done, come and gone.
Right, it's come and gone. You know, there might be some left, but the risk increases. This is what most people don't understand. Risk increases as prices go up. Cheap stocks, I mean, if I were to buy Walmart at $10 today, you know, versus $50, $10 was a lot cheaper and a lot less risky than now, you know. So
when you look at investing, we'll go on to the next question to keep us moving. Great information. A lot of times you get the individual investor and they say, all right, I need to get help, but what's the cost of that versus me trying to go this alone and do it myself? Or what should I expect the cost to be for getting this wealth of knowledge that is available for me to be able to keep on track?
cost, that's a great question. And there's been this huge movement to reduce cost in investments. And I think it's been driven a lot by Vanguard and Bogle. And Morningstar's been a big push. And the one thing Morningstar says that is the direct driver of cost, or performance, is cost. And it's a wonderful thing for investors. And no matter how much we push down cost, and that's all of our goals, but there is a cost for everything. You know, when I invest, there's a cost for me. It's just out there. And some of the things we have to look at is the cost to buy and sell. You know, the commissions are pretty much gone in the market today. Those are a thing of the past, the old stock jockeys. But, you know, there is, if I wanted to buy at TD Ameritrade, if I wanted to buy at Schwab, Fidelity, doesn't matter. There's a cost to buy a stock and a cost to sell it. It could be a ticket charge, and those are pretty low now, $5-6. But there's also a price, what they call the bid-ask spread, what the wirehouse is willing to let it go versus what it's willing to buy for. That's at the stock level. If you go to the ETF level, there's a cost for that company to put it together. It could be really, really cheap, like 1 to 5 basis points, or, you know, they could get expensive. Mutual funds is more than likely more expensive. So there's costs everywhere, and you need somebody to help you navigate those costs. For someone to say, yes, that is a normal cost, and this is the way we can reduce it as much as possible, humanly possible, or that is a cost you do not need to take.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to do that. We can do it cheaper.
Yeah, let's do it better.
Yeah, right. But there's costs. There's from mutual funds to ETFs to your advisor costs, commissions, ticket charges. It's everywhere. A lot of them, and for the most part, you want to get that cost as low as possible. And then you really want to look to make sure that your returns reflect that cost, because it doesn't matter, really. You want after cost returns. And the lower the cost, the better off you're going to be. But you really need to pay attention that what your expectations are of the returns of this investment versus the cost.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Great stuff. Well, we'll take our next break here, and when we come back, the question is how much should you invest?
Final segment, Life Planning 101, right here on KHX KDY. We'll get right back to it, Brett.
Yeah, so we're question number 4 of our list, and the next question is after we've gone through everything that we have, is what's the right amount for an investor to invest? And, you know, what are we going to look at when we look at our situation? What amount do we need to put back?
All right. I'm going to throw some scary numbers out there. There's pretty much a golden rule, you know, that you can live off of about 4% of your investments. If the market returns 10, you know, you take 4, you give a little bit to the government, you know, and then inflation, you know, that equals out to about 10%. So think of what $1 million will do for you. If you invest up to $1 million, that's $40,000 a year income for the rest of your life. $40,000, you know, and you add Social Security in there, so that's somewhere around $65,000 for a single person. And that $1 million is a big number, you know. So how much should you invest? You know, more than likely as much as you possibly can.
Right.
But when we're going back and we're talking about time, $100 a month to a 20-year-old equals about, what is it, $5,000 a month to a 50-year-old? You know, so the earlier you can start and let that time work for you, the better off you're going to be, and the cheaper it's going to be for you. But how much you should invest will always come back to, what are my goals? How much do I need to accomplish those goals? And let's back that out and see what it's going to take.
So when we talk about goal setting, and a lot of times people don't follow up on their goals because they're too big to handle. So your investing is the same thing. If you have this goal that you need to hit, maybe you started later, and your new dollar amount that you need to invest you can't reach. So a lot of times we see people say, "Gosh, I'm not going to do anything. I can't do that. I'm not going to do anything." And if it's $2,000 a month, you're supposed to put back using easy numbers. If you can do 1,000, do 1,000, and then once you get that, go to the next dollar amount, because then you're going to get a lot closer to your goal. And once you get accustomed to that lifestyle, you're not going to know the difference in that. So at the end of the day, like Aaron was saying, is always start with something, find out what the end in mind is, and then always start with something and do something today, and start young.
Start young, get started. Grandparents, probably the best gift you could do is start your children early. And it doesn't have to be a lot when they're young.
Right.
But it makes a tremendous amount of difference.
Yeah, time helps. Time
Yes.
helps. Kind of switching gears here a little bit, we've been talking about investing and putting money in. Now let's go and say, what if I need to take money from my investments? What if I'm at the other part of the end of the game where I've built this pile and now I need to start pulling some money from what I've put back?
All right. This is the easiest one to understand. No matter how you're investing, you need to really realize you have one partner, and that is Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam gets his share before anybody else, so keep that in mind. And this is just from my feelings. Not everybody feels the same way, but I want to keep that partner just as small as absolutely possible. So when you're ready to start withdrawing money, get some help, because the less of a partner Uncle Sam is, the more you get to take home. And a lot of us are going to have money in retirement accounts, which are going to be taxed different. Your regular 401k is going to be taxed different than your Roth 401k or your Roth IRA versus your joint or individual money. So get some help to see how to withdraw that and a plan to withdraw that to make those dollars stretch as long as possible. And the less you hand our partner Uncle Sam, the longer that money's going to last you.
Well, the question number 2, you already hit on that, is, how do taxes play a part in my investments? And there's really only the 3 ways to get returns, and those are the investments themselves, lower the fees, or what money you don't send to Uncle Sam.
Lower taxes, that's exactly right. And all your accounts are going to be taxed differently. And once you start withdrawing, you really need to put that foremost in your mind to how do I get this out and pay as little as I can. Pay as little fees, pay as little taxes, and get the most out of the returns out of your portfolio.
Yeah, so as we wrap things up here, Aaron, what awesome information. We could sit here for another couple coffee pots and go through this, but I know we don't have time for that this morning. But the number one question is, should there be an overall plan for my investments? And I think we've hit that on the other question. The answer to that question is absolutely. You need a plan so that you can sleep at night, know that you are where you're at, and you're going to get where you need to get to have a successful life and live life on purpose. So remember, as Benjamin Franklin said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. So make sure you find somebody to get you some help and make the right decisions. Join us on our newsletter. All of the shows are on our podcast. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email them to lifeplanning@kennedy-financial.com. Aaron, thanks for being on. God bless everybody. Have a great day.
And KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services Incorporated is an independent of Calton & Associates Incorporated and Smart Money Group, LLC.